ESL Hearthstone Legendary Series Week 3. The main event is about to start where we have 8 players today to determine who is going to get part of that $20,000 prize pool. It's going to be happening in February 21st and 22nd. My name is Frodan. Today I'm joined by Azumo. Once again, to bring you guys the Hearthstone card sling in action. Azumo, how are you doing today?
Doing great, man. Looking forward to a lot of the Hearthstone action we're going to get to see today. The last time we're going to get to see this patch before those GVG cards are released. And this will actually be the first tournament, and maybe even the last tournament, that we actually see the nerfs to these cards and how they affect the core set rather than just the GV set as well. So first matchup is going to be Lothar versus Max. And I think we can take a look at the brackets to see exactly what we'll be seeing all day today. Of course, Max versus Lothar is going to be first up. And then Xiao is going to take on Brian Kibler. And then, of course, in the second half of the day, we're going to see D2 taking on AP Drop, as well as Silent Storm taking on ECOP. And this is a single elimination bracket. So unlike yesterday during our open finals, we will get to see these guys only have one chance to make it through. And it's a little bit different format, though, this time.
Yeah, that's right. We're going to be playing best of 5 like we normally play in terms of competitive Hearthstone. They generally accept that that's the appropriate amount of games to determine who's the outright winner. But within the first 3 games, you have to pre-submit your lineup with one choice per class. So, for example, if you bring Hunter, Warlock, and Priest, you only can play them once for the first 3 games, but you also submit it ahead of time to the admin. That's the lineup phase. The second phase is the blind pick stage, where you can just pick any deck as many times as you want based on of what you interpret based off of your opponent's lineup. Because you've seen all 3 of their decks by the time Game 4 rolls around.
Yeah, so it sort of is more like a ladder style. You have to bring 3 solid decks, and you can't really get greedy with your tech choices and pick things to counter certain decks, or bring decks that you know counter a very specific deck as a counter matchup, because you just don't know what you're going to play against in any of those 3 matchups, which is that's a little bit extra dynamic to the tournament, and it makes it a little bit more exciting. Also a little bit more random, but that's sort of just like the ladder experience, and yeah, it's kind of interesting.
I think what people ultimately want more in the competitive scene is just scale the experience of ladder closer to tournaments. That way, it's not completely removed. That way, you see players who they don't have the practice partners or the established infrastructure to practice a lot of the tournament format with bans and Last Hero Standing. Yeah. And also in Last Hero Standing, you start seeing decks gravitate towards heavy greed styles where you see people just make the most ridiculous decks ever.
Yeah.
Like double Big Game Hunter with a Black Knight and a Harrison Jones just to defeat a specific type of deck that they see in tournaments.
Yeah.
This way you keep decks more accountable. The percentages are closer. That way you just don't have blowout wins because people are anticipating a certain type of deck. And this is a format that's been debated heavily, and ESL is trying it. So let us know what you guys think at ESL Hearthstone on Twitter. In the meantime, also, if you guys are seeing this competition and you want to try and participate, you can sign up for our Challenger Cups on Sunday. Every Sunday, what we do is we host an open tournament where anybody can enter. The top 4 play for 2 spots on Friday night to go for Saturday's main event, which is what we're seeing today. Again, ESL.gg/legendary series. And before we get the day started, we also want to give a big shout out to our sponsors who make this all possible at ESL.gg/Newegg Esports. You can check out all of the products for Crucial and Western Digital for your storage and memory needs. Our first match of the day will be Lothar versus Max. This one's going to be pretty cool. We've seen Max already in previous events, such as the BlizzCon European Championships, as well as DreamHack Bucharest, where he made splashes in both, but hasn't gone the distance. And this is an opportunity for him to solidify his point lead, because Max comes in as one of the top 2 players from the previous week. Not to mention that if he's able to win, he gets an invite to next week, which will be GVG.
Yeah, and the big thing with Max is that he actually came from the open bracket originally. So he got top 4 in the open bracket, qualified for last week's Challenger Finals, and then he made it to the next day where he took top 2, and so that brought him back to this week. So he made it all the way from the open bracket and competed within about 500 players to make it all the way to the top 2 from last week. Guaranteed a spot for this weekend. He's got quite a bit of points under his belt now as well, and I'm sure he's going to want to rack up some more this week to hopefully make it to that $20,000 land final.
That's right. We're going to invite 4 players from the top 4 and point standings, and we're going to also vote 4 players based off weeks 5 through 8 win. That way we balance out people who get in early versus the people who come in a little bit later. Lothar is going to bring Shaman, Druid, and Mage. No Hunter or Warlock, props to him. And Max is going to bring Priest, Mage, and Hunter. The most represented class in this series will be a Mage. Am I seeing this correctly?
I guess they may have watched yesterday and saw Silent Storm do some work with his Molten Giant Freeze Mage.
That is fascinating.
Also, we saw that popular mage that Strife Crow built at DreamHack, and that was actually really powerful as well. We talked about it a bit yesterday. So a lot of mage decks coming back into popularity here, and I'm really excited to see, hey, no Warlock.
Yeah, no Warlock. The nerf is live. We're playing on a current patch. It's not like they submitted old deck lists beforehand. We gave them the opportunity to submit deck lists even as recent as last night.
Yeah.
So that way they can be as fresh as they possibly can for the metagame. Ladder's in chaos at the moment. I've laddered a little bit, even though I peeled myself away from GVG. It makes my heart sad, but I want to ladder a little bit. And I saw all kinds of decks being put out to the woodwork. I even saw some Paladins. That was like finding a shiny Pokemon in the wild.
Yeah.
I immediately tried to catch the Paladin, but it was playing the wrong game. So going into the first match, Shaman versus Priest, that's going to be a little hard for Lothar, but at the same time, we've been seeing people experiment a lot with all kinds of archetypes. Is it a Death Rattle Priest? Is it a slower Control Priest? Is it an aggressive Shaman, the one that has a lot of burst? I'm looking forward to the first game, and I'm really looking at Lothar to be the big player here because he's had some mediocre results, and he's been looking for a breakout performance.
Yeah, Lothar is that guy that gets to a lot of those tournaments but doesn't really have the results that I'm sure he's looking for, where Max is the guy that's sort of come up from the bottom and has worked his way really hard to get where he is. So this is going to be a really great battle. And again, this is not a double elimination. So the winner moves on and the loser has to either make it through that bracket next week or just go home.
Both these guys have had middling results on the verge of breaking out. They just have to piece together a good run. All you have to do is win your first 2 matches to be guaranteed an invite for the following week. Not to mention you also get points, but still a tall order. Zombie Chow in the opening hand for Max does imply that he's trying to make sure that he's good against decks like Hunter.
Yeah.
But it still doesn't mean necessarily that he's playing a Death Rattle Priest. In fact, with Shadow Madness in his deck, I venture it's more of a Control Priest.
Yeah, Max last week brought a very heavy control style Priest, Wild Power Manters and all, so I'm not surprised that we're seeing more of a control type come out of him. Last week as well, he had probably the most success out of any decks with that Priest. During the matches that made it to that blind pick phase, Priest was his go-to pick. So he's definitely very confident in that hero.
Nice.
And definitely had a pretty high win rate last week.
Always lots of respect for players who don't have to be reliant on Hunters and Warlock.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not that those decks... I'm not bashing on them, Zumo. I'm not trying to take a dump on them. I'm just saying that it's cool to see diversity when people are saying, you know what, even if this deck is perceived as the strongest deck, I'm going to go a different route.
Yeah, well, it's pretty volatile right now, too, with the nerfs to a couple of those key cards that were a part of those decks.
Well, yeah,
Players are starting to experiment, Soulfire especially. And the experimentation is pretty big, especially right now is sort of the time to do it. I mean, what do you have to lose? This is going to be the last time they're probably going to play on this patch. Most pro players are even playing Arena right now, so they're not even going to play with this patch with these nerfs. So
yeah, I partially take responsibility because I have like a bet with half of them right now of racing to 12 wins.
Racing to 12 wins. I think you won that.
I think I did win. I mean, some of them got really fast though within a day. Power Word Shield onto the Zombie Chow. Max just taking some time to think about whether or not he wants to use it on this creature. How valuable is it?
Yeah.
Lothar picks up Nerubian Egg, so that's more of a board-centric. And, with the Dark Iron Dwarf, there's some good synergy.
Yeah.
I wonder how much early aggression or board control with, power does Lothar have? Is he running Bloodlust? Is he taking out that Doom Hammer? Does he have any other ways to fuel on the aggression? Because I love cards like Dark Iron Dwarf and Abusive Sergeant.
Yeah, and they're becoming quite popular as well. It gives great activators for some of the smaller tokens that wouldn't be of use to you otherwise, even just like totems or like the Nerubian spiders, yeah.
Because then totems become full-on cards. The way hero power has always worked, that creates a token, whether it's Shaman or Paladin, always feels like it's half or maybe a third of a card because it doesn't really truly take on another one. But you essentially trade 2 mana for a 3/1 or a 2/2, and it's actually pretty decent.
From a practical standpoint, the idea of totems attacking things is a little bit little bit scary. But
It can be. It
Yeah.
can be. Especially if this token turns into a 4/4, which is a nightmare for Priest in itself. It definitely can be scary.
yeah. So putting that egg down just to, I mean, he's got a lot of activators in his hand already, so this is a pretty good choice.
Yeah, I like that he has a lot of versatile options too. He can Dark Iron Dwarf, of course, if an easy kill comes down, but he also has the availability of Flame Tongue Totem, or if he needs to go defensive, he has Feral Spirits. And the earlier you get them down, usually the better, because Feral Spirits has a lower impact late game against Priest.
Yeah.
They have access to so many AoE, they have the mana to do it, and they also have Cabal Shadow Priest to take one of those wolves. So you have to get them down earlier. So Lothar has a pretty decent early hand. It's all about how Priest responds, though. If they just have the Alkanized Soul Priest and the Circle of Healing,
Yeah.
that's the ultimate nuke button that just destroys all momentum you've ever had.
Yeah, and you really don't want to get to a point where you're sort of all-inning way too early.
Look at that. Max holds onto the injured Blade Master, realizing that it's very easy for his opponent just to kill it off with a Rock Biter,
Yeah.
which Lothar just picked it up. That's a decision that most people, they sometimes just rush. I mean, it's been 6 minutes so far, and
Yeah.
we've gotten through 2 turns each. So these guys are making sure that their turns are well thought through before they have any other rush decisions that might cost them the game.
Yeah, I really like the way Max plays the Priest, and he's very patient with a lot of his decisions. And I think playing against the Shaman, you can really afford to do that because, I mean, most of the board, you said it, you can pretty much clear it later in the game.
Right.
Overloading the board with smaller creatures is sort of a liability against Priest.
You're not in a rush, right?
Yeah.
You have a lot of answers. The truth is you don't have too many threats.
Yeah.
You have, the Sludge Belcher is one of them. You might have Ysera, you might have, Sylvanas, but even then you have to be sure that your threats don't just get overwhelmed by what's on the board.
Yeah.
Lothar going to pop this egg anyways, and of course putting out that 4/4 is really powerful, but in this case it's going to be a 6 attack. If he baits out a Shadow or Death, that's going to pretty much take his opponent's entire turn, and then he can Feral Spirits or even Mana-Tide Totem.
Yeah. And it's pretty big too, getting out that Shadow or Death to
Yep.
make it so there's less answers for those big creatures that the Shaman is inevitably going to put out later, like those Fire Elementals. So it would actually be pretty beneficial to him for Max to use his entire turn to be able to clear that Nerubian.
Exactly, because then you just give the initiative back to Shaman.
Exactly.
In fact, because of this, I feel like the Mana-Tide Totem is great, because then on turn 5, how do you deal with 2-3 health minions? You have to have Pyromancer plus a few other things to, like Holy Smite and Power Word Shield to clear it, and he's already used one. This is a very excellent play from Lothar, well thought out.
And it's really awkward too, especially because Shadow Madness is usually a great removal for those smaller creatures, but you can't use that for Mana-Tide or Flame Tongue, just because, well, they don't have attack. So even if you steal something, the Flame Tongue buff is, of course, going to go off of it. So he does have the Holy Nova, but again, against higher health creatures, anything more than 2, it's going to be rough. So this is a tough turn because he can't clear this Nerubian. He can't play that injured Blade Master because he's not going to be able to heal, and even if he could, it would just be able to get cleared by that Nerubian pretty easily, which he definitely wants to protect that injured Blade Master. Ooh, and the
Reincarnate makes sense because you do have the Nerubian Egg, but it's a little bit late. Now it's an interesting series of choices as well. You can play on curve with the Dark Iron Dwarf, start trading down a little bit. I mean, the Flame Tongue Totem already served a little bit of purpose, and you still have 2 4-attack creatures out on the board. It doesn't feel very good because you give up your Flame Tongue Totem and your objective. I mean, you promised that Flame Tongue Totem since birth that you take care of it, but in this scenario, I think it's ready for bigger and better things.
Yeah, a lot of times when we see that Reincarnate as well, we see cards like Sylvanas also. The Reincarnate Sylvanas is such a fantastic combo to be able to pull off. And,
Absolutely.
He's actually going to go ahead and sack that Flame Tongue Totem in. So leaving 2 4/4s, or, well, the Nerubian is a little bit low now, is really tough for a Priest to deal with. Especially at this point in the game, you know that his hand's not the greatest. He's got a lot of reactionary cards here. And some tough turns for Max coming up, but I'd say Lothar's in a decent position. He's played pretty well so far this match.
Well, and now you just have to present the way to respond, right? The Sludge Belcher is just better than trying to remove or even playing a 4/5 creature. The Injured Blade Master does actually have some good combos on turn 8, so...
Yeah, and, well, Injured Blade Master, I mean, it wouldn't be the worst choice here because he can heal it up and it puts it out of range of those 2 4-attack creatures.
Oh, okay, interesting. So
And
he wants, yeah.
He knows that one Flame Tongue totem has already been played, so it's going to be pretty tough to trade into it. And there is the Sylvanas, so that sets up some really great plays. It's sort of a 8-mana, 2-card mind control that also leaves you with the Sylvanas on the board. So
I think Lothar is playing Undertakers in this deck. It seems to just heavily lean towards a Death Rattle Shaman, and we've seen players be successful with this. The most prominent, of course, is Kalento in recent memory. And I personally like this. It's just that I do know and recognize that the board can easily be completely destroyed, and it's really hard to get back momentum. Not to mention top decking the, well, not top decking, but drawing the Undertaker late game is pretty painful.
yeah, especially since he's already drawn into a lot of those Death Rattle creatures. Well, I guess just the egg, but and a lot of times the Shaman can just run out of juice at some point in the match, and when they do that and they're relying on getting draws in the later stages of the game, and then an Undertaker comes out, that's the worst feeling in the world.
Absolutely. Now this is a cross your fingers for no Cabal Shadow Priest, but you get a lot of information from your opponent on this turn based off how he reacts, and Sludge Belcher drop is going to give Lothar a big sigh of relief because of what he expected.
So he's still on the coin here, and the Fire Elemental would be okay here, but it's still, you'd be wasting quite a bit of damage because it basically, you'd only be getting 1 damage effectively out of the Fire Elemental's Battle Cry. So I think Drake here probably seems like the right choice, but it also, that would be a little awkward too, just because then he wouldn't be able to clear the Sludge Belcher that turn, and you'd be vulnerable to, well, some AoE, I guess.
Yeah, this is a little bit of an awkward turn. I think developing the Fire Elemental is okay.
Yeah.
In the back of your mind, you're still worried about like the possibility of Holy Nova, but that costs his entire turn essentially, and Fire Elemental still lives. And Mannetide already drew 2 cards. You don't have to be too greedy in the sense like I have to go all out to protect this totem. Again, you've made a solemn swear that you protect these totems, but sometimes they understand when they have to take one for the team. And this provokes such a strong response because now you're using Holy Nova. You already drew a card or 2 cards off of it. The value off this totem might single-handedly give Lothar the win, because what happens is Shaman spends a lot of their cheap removals and spells in order to gain a board advantage, and the Priest clears it. And then they have like 5 to 10 cards, and you have like 1 to 3 cards. The fact that opposite is happening is a very poor spot for Max.
Yeah, so he is going to be able to clear that totem, but again, like you said, Fire Elemental is going to be left on the board, and this hand is actually really great for Lothar. He's got so many options here, and that Sylvanas Reincarnate is sort of an emergency button as well. If something big comes out that you don't want to have to deal with, you can steal it, and like we said, that Reincarnate, hey, that leaves you with another Sylvanas on the board, so it's just 2 threats that your opponent has to deal with. And sometimes it's something that priests just don't really expect.
Yep, absolutely. Lothar hoping for Healing Totem here. Spell Power Totem, not exactly the most useful since he doesn't have any spells, but it's not like Max is in the greatest spot either because he doesn't have optimal removal lined up.
Yeah.
He can deal with the Drake, he can deal with the Fire Elemental, but it's going to be costly if he does so.
Yeah, and it's going to be a pretty awkward turn regardless. Sludge Belcher doesn't feel good at this point just because...
He's got 2 spell power, so a Lightning Bolt single-handedly can just destroy this really easily.
And he hasn't seen pretty much any removal thus far. He's seen 1 Earthshock, I believe, and that's been it. And, I mean, well, no. I was going to say there might be a possibility that he cut Lightning Bolts from his deck. I've seen it happen before, especially when you put in quite a few cards like all those Death Rattles and Sylvanas plus Reincarnate.
I wonder if he's thinking about Sylvanas Reincarnate now, the viability of it, but I think he's also wondering about how he should most efficiently deal with this. Defender of Argus seems like it's an easy way to respond. Lightning Storm...
Oh, if he doesn't roll high, this could be...
I think it's okay. You can still trade into it regardless.
Yeah.
It's still just attack into the Drake. Unfortunately, he just loses out and takes a little bit more damage. It does open yourself up to a Holy Nova, but... At the same time, I think you're okay with this.
Yeah, he's already played 1 Holy Nova, so the chances of him having a second one, even the chances of him even running a second one, and also in that situation, that'd be a good read for you if you have to play the Priest deck in the future. Knowing that he runs 2 Holy Novas would be a pretty great piece of information, but he's really thinking here.
Well, I mean, he's just gonna have to kill us off, totem up.
Yeah.
I think he might even hold off on a Feral Spirits. Depends on he wants to interpret his opponent's hand a little bit more.
Yeah.
And, you know, with the taunt totem, you actually don't have to do much. So I think holding on to Feral Spirits is fine. Yeah, and it makes sense. It's like now it's a test to see if he has Pyromancer or Holy Nova, because this is a prime board to use it on. But he doesn't have it.
Yeah, I believe he's already played. Yeah, he played both Wild Pyromancers on the same turn earlier, so he's running out of options here. He's played one of the Holy Novas. He's gonna rely, as this game goes on drawing into that Akanai Soul Priest, because that's really gonna be his only effective way to clear the board. He's got so many reactive cards in his hand right now, and no minions to buff with Power Word Shield is.
Just look at, again, how important that Manatide was. Also, Lothar got a little bit fortunate that he didn't roll the 1/1 Searing Totem.
Yeah.
That would have been like a Shadow Madness
Yep.
into one of these 1-health minions.
Yep.
So, definitely not a great spot to be in if you're Max. He doesn't want to use, he doesn't want to heal his opponent to try and give him more opportunities for him to have a stronger board. Does he have a choice, though? I mean, he's right now sitting duck. Otherwise, he passes a turn or uses Holy Fire on a target that he doesn't want to.
Yeah, Lothar has to
Wow.
sense the desperation right now when your priest opponent Power Word Shields one of your creatures, and then passes.
There's no rush for Lothar. It's like, well, I still have 10 damage on board. That's a 3-turn clock.
Yeah.
Maybe you can add one more thing to the board, like an Argus or a Flame Song, but
Yeah.
other than that, just don't play anything else. There's just no need to overcommit. Just put him on a clock where you can kill him on the next turn, possibly.
Yeah.
I like it. And now it's back over to Max to see how he responds here.
You definitely don't want to get too greedy at this point. He's traded so well this game. I mean, there's so many cards that Max has just put out that have just died and haven't even traded into a single creature or only one. And so Lothar's been just playing super efficiently.
Max has a really cool play here. He needs to Shadow Madness his 1/1 first and then Holy Nova.
Yeah.
And then you can get past the Taunt Totem and kill off the Drake. This
Yeah.
is actually really cool. You don't actually... there's the very rare scenarios where you use a Searing Totem to try and kill off your opponent's board, but this is what it is. And Lothar, he understood that this is what he was expecting to a certain degree.
Yeah.
But this is why he kept Feral Spirits.
Exactly.
The Defender of Argus. Like, he has so many ways to load the board. I expect 4 or 5 minions next turn.
Yeah, and he knows that his opponent is running out of ways to be able to deal with this board if he couldn't deal with it last turn.
That's also a big draw, too. The fact that he can have more insurance against AoE just in case his opponent has one more form to get past it. Feral Spirits and the Egg.
Well, I found that the egg in the
And
late game
Totem.
actually is not as great as it would be earlier on because,
Think so?
well, you can just heal the egg. If you have the Akanai Circle, which is the only option left, you can just heal the egg and then still be able to clear the Nerubian.
Ah, you're right. You're right.
So
That's a good point.
the egg is sometimes can be not as great as people might think in that later stages of the game, especially when we haven't seen either Circle of Healing or either Akanai Soul Priest.
Well, he uses hero power, so even if he picks Akanai up, can't do it. And now Sylvanas comes into hand, which almost certainly he feels he has to drop, but he hasn't seen Hex. He did see one Earthshock, but that's still 3 out of the, 20 cards or so Lothar's drawn this game.
Yeah, and I mean, he could just... Next turn, Lothar could just steal that Sylvanas and still have a Sylvanas for himself. So it'd be
correct.
double Sylvanas on his board. But he doesn't go ahead and lay it. Probably the smarter choice.
Okay, so Lothar again has to be wondering about the Akanai Circle of Healing combination. That's the one way Priest can climb back into this game. So with that said, how do you progress here, Zuma?
I think you want to buff up that Nerubian egg. Probably Defender of Argus on the Nerubian egg because that'll protect it from that AoE. I think that'd probably be the best choice because we talked about the last turn. But he actually goes ahead and uses it on both these Feral Spirits. I'm not sure if that's...
It is a little bit surprising.
I think
I think he wants to
egg.
put this outside of the Cabal Shadow Priest range as well.
That could be true.
He realizes that these 2/2/3 taunt minions have immediately more value than a 0/2 taken from him.
Yeah.
And that thing is more of a home insurance. Not to mention he has a second defender.
Yeah.
And in fact, he can actually buff another wolf with the egg the following turn, and then have a 4 or 5 minion. This is a big act of desperation.
Man. If you were Lothar here and you felt like being a little cheeky, you could just steal your Feral Spirit right back. But I don't think that's a very smart play. But, I mean, Max is just in such a terrible spot.
Yeah,
Hasn't seen either hex.
for sure. I mean, you can just push here.
Yeah.
A second defender here to push through the taunt, and then now you can activate the egg, so that way it's more resilient against that Akanai Soul Priest clear, like you mentioned.
Yeah. He's still thinking through his turns because he doesn't want to overextend too much. He still doesn't want to get into a position where he's sort of running out of answers. But at this point, he can do so
has
many.
Never hit his Undertakers. This is actually humorous at this point.
Yeah.
Actually, the truth is we don't know if he's playing it.
Yeah.
But he has so many death battles. It's like, well, surely you have to be playing it.
Yeah.
Not to mention, by the way, that if his opponent, like, you might be wondering, he just gave up Hex. What if he has just Steroid Storm? He still has Reincarnate.
Yeah. As long as you have another answer in your hand, you can be pretty liberal with your hexes. And I mean, he knows that he hasn't drawn on that second one or a second Earth Shock. He's still got plenty of ways to deal with this. And
I love the restraint on not toteming as well. He realized he needs another slot just in case he needs to Sylvanas. And look! His opponent gifted him with another Sylvanas.
Yeah.
Now, interestingly enough, he actually has to still give up a spot. Otherwise, his reincarnated Sylvanas won't pop up. So he's going to have to suicide probably the Defender Vargas.
Yep.
And then take the Sylvanas. I know because I've made this mistake before.
Yeah.
Where I tried to reincarnate Sylvanas.
oh, I'm going to get two Sylvanas.
Right. And then I actually didn't get my second one back.
Just
because,
kidding.
It was a full board. So.
You get a little bit ahead of yourself when you get excited at cool plays.
Definitely, definitely.
Happens to the best of us. Me more than probably anybody else in the world. Well, probably going to be the play here.
At first, he's checking to see how much damage he has. Only a 9, so about half the chunk. So the first play is to take it, but you have to make sure not to kill off your own Sylvanas in the process. Otherwise, that Sylvanas was worth it.
Yeah. Oh,
And
wow.
this is so devastating if you're Max. Your opponent has 2 Sylvanas. Even if you Akanai Soul Priest, he's going to take it. I think Max is making a small note that he's playing Reincarnate just in case he hits his Shaman one more time. But Lothar has played immaculately. This is probably one of the best games I've seen him play in a long time.
Yeah, and Max, I mean, at this point, he probably knows that it's going to be pretty grim for him. He does have Akanai double circle. He doesn't have the Akanai double circle, but if he draws into an Akanai, then he would have that. So maybe there's still a small chance, but it's looking very grim. At this point, I think he just wants to keep in the game just so he can see the rest of these cards, because this is a little bit of an interesting Shaman deck.
Well, this game should be over. He has the damage to push in for the final bits of damage, and Lothar starts off to a 1-0 lead. Well played. And again, I was saying at the very beginning of the broadcast that I was looking at Lothar to start picking up his play. He's been telling me how he's been tired. He recently is leaving Planet Key Dynamics, even though it helped him a lot. But that's because I believe there's new horizons or new opportunity on the horizons for him that allows him to focus on Hearthstone a little bit more. Because he was a guy that was playing it part-time while having a job. He recently got married. The guy's winning at life. Let's be real. He fell directly into the shallow end of the gene pool here, being able to be balance all these kinds of skills and whatnot. He was also in a band too, by the way. He's like a lead guitarist. He's a lead guitarist on like a heavy metal band or something.
Yeah, he actually wrote a few novels and traveled the world as well.
Yeah, he actually has developed a cure to cancer. But he's withholding it for now because he's trying to like market it or something. I don't know. The guy's is a wonderful human being. But Lothar is actually starting to pick up his Hearthstone play too. That was a great game.
Yeah, and GVG is going to be a fresh start for a lot of players. A lot of chances to show off deck building skills.
Yep.
And even right now, I mean, this is still a time where creativity can go a long way. Creativity has always been rewarded in a lot of these decks. So next match is going to be Druid versus Mage. So I'm really curious to see what Mage deck Max is actually going to be bringing here.
Yeah, that's where I'm going to start leaning towards the other way now. I'm going to say, Max, what did you bring to the table differently? Because when you see a Druid, nothing should really surprise you, short of the Murloc Druids, right? Everyone says Murloc Druid is the way to go, and you're like, man, I haven't played Hearthstone in 6 months. What deck should I play? And then the subreddit just trolls everybody. It's like, oh, Murloc Druid's OP. And everyone's like 15 upvotes about 30 seconds ago. It's like, yeah. Can we all do something about Murloc Druids?
The community troll. It's the greatest.
No, I mean, nothing in Druids to surprise you, but Mage is the one that holds all of the cards.
Oh, yeah. literally and metaphorically there.
Yeah.
But we saw yesterday that Silent Storm was playing the more freeze-oriented mage, balance in it, which sort of shores up their bad matchups. Makes it a little bit easier for you to go against like Hunter or Warrior, which could be a little bit tougher.
Or is it a Secrets Mage?
Or,
one that's more oriented around tempo with the Kirin Tor Mage, Mad Scientist, and being able to make power plays while being able to use your spells to leverage for board positions and wins. And it looks like he's playing Twilight Drakes, Molten Giants, and Water Elementals. This seems like a hand mage that I've seen other people experiment with, including Hyped from Team Tempo Storm. Or Crusher is a guy who's well known for trying out different wacky decks, some good, some bad, and making them really fun. So let's see Max take on this deck version here.
Yeah, this deck is actually really interesting. It's sort of like a ghetto handlock in a way, but I like it in the matchups that usually Mage is pretty poor in, and especially against Warrior. I think this hand Mage really does pretty well against. Warrior in a lot of cases because you have a lot of cards that do pretty well against it. And actually, Frost Nova and Ice Block as well.
So
in this deck.
It's going to be heavier on the freeze side of things.
Yep.
But you do have some minions. I wouldn't be surprised to see if he also plays Duplicate in this deck.
Yeah.
Because Duplicate with Twilight Drake actually is brilliant, the more you think about it. Lothar threw away everything here. He threw away his Big Game Hunter, his Force of Nature, and it makes sense. He doesn't need those combo pieces. But the Big Game Hunter is always like I'm not sure exactly what mage it is.
Yeah.
And even if it is like a freeze mage with Alex Straza, I won't need it. I still have like 8 turns to draw it, so... Usually, if you know it's a freeze mage, you have to keep Big Game Hunter for Alex Straza, but in this case, he's playing it safe.
Yeah, and these early turns are a big indicator of what kind of druid it is. I mean, you said it earlier, it's pretty easy to determine what a druid is actually going to have. There's just so much crossover between cards and all the decks. Like Ancient of Lores and Force of Nature, at least one Force of Nature Saboteur is going to be in almost every deck, but... Okay, this is actually, he's curving out pretty nicely here.
He is. He still needs a turn 4 play. He also did not play around Cone of Cold, so if this was Hype's traditional freeze mage, where he was able to use Cone of Cold, pow, that'd be like 1 health less on your, on all of your minions.
Yeah.
But of course he doesn't need it. Now, Double Savage Roar is so powerful. He actually has like a really wild opportunity to put on some major damage in the next couple turns, maybe even kill him.
He can threaten lethal very quickly, especially with Druid of the Claw. You put that in charge form, and then he's already got the Force of Nature in his hand. Probably not going to even get a chance to use that in this game, though.
Do you use one here?
I would say so. Just push for damage as quick as you can. You know that. Yeah. I mean, that's 3 tokens on the board. That's so much damage that he's going to pump in already. He's going to put him to 15 health, and that actually
It's lethal next turn.
He's lethal next turn, yeah.
Oh, that's a little unfortunate that he's not able to...
Oh, no.
Ooh.
Could this game be over already?
Wait, actually, I didn't count for the
6, 9,
hero power.
12.
So that's 6.
game.
Plus
yeah.
8 is 14, 15 damage.
That's
lethal.
it. Wow, and the game is over.
Oh, no.
Just like that.
Oh, Max, his mouth just dropped open. He's like, well, what just happened?
That's the saddest.
Oh, no.
And Lothar knows it. He's saying, oh, I feel gross right now, taking a sip of the best mug I've ever seen in my entire life. Wow. Well, looks like Lothar goes up to a quick 2-0 lead.
I had so many cool things to say about that mage deck because it's very reminiscent of Hype's deck.
Yeah. We didn't even get to talk about that mage deck.
He died on turn 4, turn 5.
Yeah. Well, I'm a little flabbergasted right now, Froden, to be completely honest with you.
The reality is those kinds of games happen sometimes.
Yeah.
Good recognition from Lothar not to be like, well, I can use this on turn 6 in one go. It's like, no, actually, you just need to use it now on turn 3.
Yeah.
Especially when he saw Arcane Intellect, he's like, it's got to be a really passive slow mage. So, well done to Lothar, but wow, that was extremely one-sided. Now, we get to flip the page here and look at Lothar's mage deck. Now, I know Lothar really loves Secrets Mage. He thinks it's so good to disrupt your opponent, interrupt their thought process, and basically make it really difficult for them to ever predict what you're playing or doing, and then put them in uncomfortable situations. Sometimes you have like a duplicate and just a Sylvanas on board. You're like, oh gosh, I actually can't do anything to it.
Yeah, and mage secrets are, in my opinion, a little bit tougher to play around than a lot of other secrets, just because sometimes it's just really hard to check what it is without overextending or without giving your opponent a big advantage. And so I really like Secrets Mage too. It's a really fun deck to play, but it's also a really terrible deck to play against. It's very frustrating at times, but we'll see what Lothar's going with.
Do you realize that entire game, 6 cards were played?
Yeah.
Like we had 4 cards from Druid and 2 from the Mage.
That entire game, I think, lasted about as long as the first 2 turns from the previous game, which is
that's also a good point because both of them roped on turn 1.
Yeah.
Not exactly the games that I was expecting, but Max can turn around. I want to see that Mage deck again because Lothar's not playing Hunter.
Yeah.
And if he's not playing Hunter, which is the greatest weakness to this deck, I mean, I feel like that Mage has the potential to do some wacky things if given another opportunity. Because this is where our format's supposed to kick in, right? You're supposed to get an opportunity to play a deck again if you feel like it was underrepresented.
Yep.
We'll maybe see that. But Max first has to get there to game number 4. So let's hop in to see if his Hunter can take out Lothar's Mage and send it into the blind pig stage. And he needs to win this, otherwise Max is out of the tournament already, and it's still within the hour. So
that would be a heartbreaking loss as well, just because of how quickly that second game ended. Max last week actually clawed his way back from a couple of games where he was down 2-0, and a lot of it was off the back of his priest deck. So this looks sort of similar to what Max was running, but with those 3 cards, it's kind of hard to tell what exactly is going to be in the deck. But
I think
duplicate with a loot hoarder.
Yeah, duplicate and loot hoarder. Heavily imply its secrets in combination, just because you don't want to ever duplicate cards that don't give you value like that. And if you're playing Freeze Mage, you want to duplicate your Molten Giants, your Twilight Drakes, your Water Elementals. Like those are the targets you want. Versus in this deck, duplicate is like a late game draw mechanism for your really powerful minions. So he's gonna be looking for Undertaker. Mad Scientist is great too.
Yeah.
Secrets are one of the worst things you can draw when you have Mad Scientist in hand.
Yeah. So, looking at Max's hand here, it's pretty good. He's got a decent curve out. Doesn't have that many death rattle creatures to be able to buff up this Undertaker, but at the same time, I mean, Lothar doesn't really have any ways to be able to deal with an Undertaker if it starts to get bigger.
That is true. If he just simply buffs it here, then he just pings it down. Yeah.
But if you get 2 buffs on it, be a little bit tougher to deal with it.
Absolutely. He doesn't have a Frostbolt in hand. And the worst feeling is when you have to use removal spells such as your Fireball against the Undertaker, and you're like, what? Another secret in hand. This is one of the drawbacks of playing the Secrets Mage, in my opinion. But the nice caveat is that you can influence what secret you want based off playing something.
Yeah.
So, like, say he was under no pressure and he didn't need to use his hero power.
Yeah.
He could play like Counterspell because he wants to get, a duplicate or mirror entity, which looks like this is mirror entity.
It is. By the way. It is mirror entity. So there he goes, and that's probably not something that he wants to really steal. Mirror entity.
It's okay though, right?
It's okay, but it's tough to get something good when you're playing against Hunter because they have so many little creatures that they're gonna play to test for that.
I mean, it challenges the board, which is actually enough.
Yeah.
And even though the mirror entity does cost 3 mana, it wasn't played from the hand, so he gained that 3 mana tempo effectively, even though this is a 1 mana creature. So Lothar still has a pretty decent position here. He can take out 4 power off the board. Love the sequencing, making sure not to take out the Mad Scientist too early, so in case it's a freezing trap, he loses some momentum.
So 2 duplicates in his hand. He's really going to have to control what is killed with that duplicate, and it shouldn't be too tough. But I think Sledge Belcher, since it's the only creature in his hand, but that's still I would say that's still a pretty good target against Hunter to be able to duplicate and have a lot of in your hand.
What do you think about that Chillwind Yeti in the Hunter deck?
I am a fan of the Chillwind Yeti. You said I believe we talked about it yesterday, and you said it's a good ladder edition. But I think it's good as either a replacement for Houndmaster or in combination with a Houndmaster, like 1 Yeti, 1 Houndmaster, because it allows you to curve out better, and if you don't have a beast synergy with the Houndmaster, it feels pretty terrible to just lay a naked Houndmaster on the board on turn 4 or whatever it is. Yeti just gets so much more value.
Well, I'm going to spoil some things for you. Houndmaster's always naked, at least in the card art. He's not wearing pants.
I guess so. Chillwind Yeti is as well.
Yeah, but he's got so much fur that it's like naturally clothed.
They're just free spirits. They don't care about
That's right.
flaunting what they got to the world.
So 2 routes of play here: go defensive or be more aggressive on the board, or at least aggressive with the cards in your hands. This Kieran Tormage, I like it. I like putting counterspell down.
Yeah.
To try and present problems and disrupt your opponent. I mean, this is what Secret's Mage is supposed to do. If you
Yeah.
just simply play on curve, you're nothing special, honestly.
Yeah.
You're just another mid-range deck that you can see on Arena.
Yeah. And he definitely doesn't want to play the duplicate in that situation just because neither of these creatures are something that he really is going to value a lot. I mean, I guess the Kirator Mage would be okay because he could keep playing secrets every turn, but...
Okay, so Max knows this isn't duplicate because he would have gotten rid of the Loot Hoarder.
Yeah.
So now Max can interpret if this is Mirror Entity or Counterspell. He's going to use the coin. I like it a lot. And now, because he sees it's not Mirror Entity, he's free to play Lothar, and that is going to be super disruptive.
Yeah, just a great read there, and you can tell that Max just really gave away what that was.
Never mind. I thought he was going to play Lothar, but I guess he's going to instead opt to save it for a more special occasion.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he still doesn't know exactly what's in this deck. Well, I guess he sort of has a decent idea, but still, saving the Lothar for a time where you might be in a little bit of danger or you have a little bit of a bigger board to protect. I mean, this is still a big board as it is, but spells are so crucial in Secrets Mage just because you have to play Secrets every turn or have to do something that disrupts your opponent's board or disrupts your opponent's play every single turn. So Lothar is a huge tempo swing usually, but I guess he values saving that quite a bit more.
You're okay sending this Kieran Tormage back to your hand, right? Because
yeah,
it's like you gain back the 1 mana you lose with the secret you play anyway, so the tempo is actually not as bad.
You want to play that duplicate probably next turn just to well, actually no, because this Yeti's or this Sludge Belcher is going to be cleared out.
Well, sure, but
still, there's not really any other choice. I think
you have the flexibility, so to speak.
Yep. Ooh, 2 Yetis.
Yeah, so 2 Yetis. That implies no Houndmasters. Right?
Yep.
You don't usually play Houndmasters.
No, there's not.
Yetis.
There's not enough room for that many 4-drops in Hunter. I don't think. Because what if you get a handful of 4-drops and you're running Undertakers? That's almost good game right there. So I think it's just as complete replacement for those Houndmasters.
So the Max just pondering about what's the most efficient way to play this turn. I do lean towards the Iron Peak Owl.
Yeah.
It is his last beast in the scenario he draws Kill Command, but I think dealing with the Sludge Belcher is too inefficient otherwise.
Yeah, he could still play the Yeti as well, which would fit pretty well on curve.
But then you charge the face, right? Then you put him down at 8 health.
Yeah.
And he still has to deal with the board. Are you worried about Flame Strike at all?
I don't think you really have the luxury of worrying about Flame Strike too much. I mean, you always got to be worried about it, but at the same time, he can't afford to really play around it because then he's just gonna not be putting on pressure, which is gonna be the death of him. Because he really just needs to put Lothar on the clock here.
Well, he is on a clock for sure. I mean, Lothar needs to kill him in the next 3 turns at the minimum. His opponent might be able to draw into more damage. Not to mention that he's got spells to lock him out, or he's got the anti-spell cards,
which
might lock him out in Lothar. I feel like Lothar is at like a 5% chance or less to win this game right now.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. And getting his hand clogged with so many secrets early on, I'm sure was not what he wanted to happen.
No, that is the main drawback to this deck.
Yeah. Well, who knew that the downfall of Secrets Mage would be that you have just so many secrets? It's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah, well, the Explosive Trap will put him down to 2 turns, assuming he can even clear the board. He can, but that means that gives him 1 more turn, and he also dedicates his turn to removal here, so... This is a pretty nasty spot. He needs to draw, like, he has to be playing life gain in here. Like, you know that new card in GVG that says gain 4 health if you control secret?
Yeah, the Illuminator, I think? Something Illuminator?
Yeah, well done, man. That's what you need. Well, actually, never mind. He has a bow, so that's going to be game number 3.
Yep.
And now we go to the point where we transition to the blind pick stage. Max can play Hunter again. He can try his Mage one more time, and Lothar has access to his Shaman and Druid once more.
Yeah, so this is a pretty interesting dynamic once we get into this blind pick phase because there's a lot of mind games going on. You have to sort of try and predict what your opponent is going to play, but at the same time make sure you pick a matchup that's going to be good against whatever he plays.
Yeah,
I don't know
definitely.
if Max is going to go ahead and pick that priest, or sorry, the mage. I want to see it again, but I'm pretty sure he's traumatized after that game 2 that we saw.
Yeah, I think Hunter is his best bet.
Yeah, I would agree.
You can destroy the mage again. Shaman is always like a matchup where you feel like you can win if your opponent just doesn't have a good hand.
Yep.
Druid is the same way too. It can struggle with the Hunter for sure.
Yep.
And then how does Lothar feel? Then it means he's gonna pick his deck that he feels like is best equipped to fight the Hunter. And in this opinion, or in this department, it can be either a Shaman or a Druid.
Yeah.
The Druid is best equipped to fight the Hunter. Is usually the one with a lot of 2-drops like Echoing Ooze and Haunted Creeper.
Yeah.
But I do like the Death Rattle Shaman a lot.
Yeah.
Against Hunter, generally speaking.
I would actually think that we might end up seeing Druid versus Hunter in this one.
Okay.
I wouldn't be surprised, Shaman versus Hunter as well, but Lothar just won so quickly in that one game. So,
yeah.
And there it is, Druid versus Hunter. All right.
Makes sense. It's the safest pick for both players here. And Lothar here did get a really good win, so his Druid is feeling pretty confident. Not to mention, Druid sometimes just falls into wins too.
Yep.
Just based off its curve. In the meantime, one thing I love about this matchup is at conventional overtones are completely reversed sometimes.
Yeah.
The Hunter, even though wants to be aggressive with its hero power, often plays the control, and then Druid's the one being aggressive and comboing. It's like, well, you know, it's a really interesting reversal of roles sometimes. Depends on how the opening hands pan out.
Yeah, one big thing to note is Max actually runs explosive traps instead of snake traps. So sometimes that can actually be a pretty big deal, especially against Druid. And especially against Druids that run like Echoing Ooze, it could a well-timed explosive trap can really stop the momentum that a Druid can build up. And those plays that we saw against the Mage, if there's an explosive trap drawn early on, he can't really do those crazy turns where he can push damage. And now that Max knows exactly what type of deck Lothar is running, he knows he sees 2 Savage Roars, which is pretty obvious because of the token nature of his deck. And the Echoing Ooze, and I'm sure Haunted Creepers as well. He knows how to play against it a little bit better, and I think his Hunter deck is probably well equipped.
I think so. I like the addition of Explosive Trap. That's certainly going to help Lothar a lot. Defender of Argus and Spectre Knight is a 2-card combination that gave Hunters a hell of a time for a while. But how confident does Lothar feel in this hand? I mean, if he had Innervate instead of Lotheb, I would say keep this whole hand.
Yeah. This seems like a Druid deck that's sort of crafted to go against Hunters.
Yeah, but I think of course, you want to be able to keep in mind Hunters are available. There's no bans in this format.
Yeah.
You want your 2-drops, though. As much as this hand could work beautifully on paper, you need to go for your aggressive 2-mana cost creatures.
Yeah.
And Lothar has 2 games to get to it. That hand is pretty poor, to say the least. But Hunter only has a play for turn 2 at the moment, and that is a pretty nice draw. The only thing is that Lothar doesn't have a guaranteed second 2-drop.
Yeah.
You would instantly coin out Echoing Ooze if you had Haunted Creeper or another one. But he might hold on here and just pass.
I would save the coin for that turn 4 play, having a Keeper of the Grove or maybe even a swipe, but most likely Keeper of the Grove for the turn 4 play. And Echoing Ooze can still be a little awkward if you play turn 1. It can be a little bit tough to deal with some creatures. Like Haunted Creeper, you wouldn't even be able to clear a full Haunted Creeper if it was played with Echoing Ooze and a hero power. But,
he's wondering about the chances of drawing into another 2-drop right here. And he's also wondering, well, what happens if I wait? What if he plays Mad Scientist or Haunted Creeper? If he plays Haunted Creeper, I can use my hero power to leverage. If he plays Mad Scientist, I still hero power. I may be able to pop a trap prematurely and then disrupt his tempo flow. Like Explosive Trap was just nothing more than a steady shot. Okay.
Yeah. And that's actually a really great point, because this is going to allow him to use half of an Echoing Ooze, basically, to get rid of the entire value of that Mad Scientist getting that secret.
Well, that was if he didn't draw another 2-drop.
Oh, yeah,
which he just did. Now it complicates things a little bit further.
Wow.
Where it's like, well, if it is Explosive Trap, which we know is possible, do I want to toss out Haunted Creeper? I don't have a turn 3 play.
Yeah.
No Shade of Naxxramas is in the hand.
Yeah.
I don't know.
This is tough. Because you want to protect that Haunted Creeper, but at the same time, you want to sort of put things on the board and play on curve. And on the off chance that it is a Freezing Trap, the Haunted Creeper would be obviously the right play.
I like Haunted Creeper here personally.
Okay.
Even if he has Explosive Trap,
Yeah.
you still have the two 1/1s that appear afterwards.
Yeah.
He doesn't have any indication of what trap he wants, and more importantly, turn 3 is a little bit awkward if he had Animal Companion now because you can remove anything that comes out.
Yeah.
Actually no, if he attacks the 1/2 instead. But either way, the Haunted Creeper increases the chances that you can deal with the turn 3 play.
Yeah, and he can actually control which trap he gets here from his Mad Scientist if he plays his Freezing Trap. So he can go for an Explosive Trap.
Right. He's really confident in his ability to get an Explosive Trap.
Well, if he only runs one Freezing Trap, then he knows already that it's going to be an Explosive Trap anyway. So that could be a possibility.
So then, what do? Do you attack with 2 of the minions first, kill off 1, and attack with the last? So you use your 2 Echoing Oozes to attack the face first?
Yeah, I would do that. Because then if it's Explosive Trap, you're still putting on that extra 3 damage. Doesn't seem like a lot, but at the same time, I mean, 3 damage could end up being the difference between killing your opponent and not. There's no reason not to attack. He actually just doesn't even clear the Mad Scientist at all, just forcing...
Right, he had no turn 3 play, so he didn't have a bow, right? You don't have to worry about giving extra charges and whatnot. So he is playing a Defender of Argus as well. That is interesting.
Wow, okay.
That is really fascinating to me, because I've seen this being played by Kranich in the BlizzCon World Championship.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a really clever replacement for Houndmaster, because it's about the same value.
Yep.
But he's playing both that and Yeti. So I think it's purely designed to win a lot of the mirror matches, because taunts can really decide how the Hunter damage translates, and then you can get an early edge.
He's playing Black Knight as well, so there's a lot of tech cards put in there, a lot of cards that a lot of hunters aren't able to fit in, but he does it.
Of course, well, we overlooked that he has Keeper of the Grove to silence the Mad Scientist as well, so that was another contingency plan here.
He actually has both Keeper of the Groves in his hand right now as well. Deciding on how he wants to clear this board here.
Yeah, I think
just going face.
Just again, he's the one being the aggressor because he's the one threatening Savage Roar, right?
Yeah.
I love this. This is good recognition from Lothar to say, you have to deal with me. And the only question is, does he want to use Innervate at all, just to keep his Keeper of the Grove a little bit safer? It's it's stronger health and body. What can his opponent do on turn 5? He can bow and hero power if he drew it.
Yeah.
I think he's thinking about protecting his Keeper a little bit here.
I think this is the right choice to clear off this Mad Scientist. And he doesn't draw on that Savage Roar, but he's forcing that Hunter into the situation where he's the one that has to play the control style that you talked about a little bit earlier. And if he's doing that, then you know that he's not doing damage to face. I mean, we're getting pretty late. Well, not pretty late. This game has been pretty slow paced, but turn 5 and he's still at 25 health, which is very good for a Druid.
This can be considered the beginning of the late game.
Yeah.
I mean, this is how fast paced the matchup can be.
Some might even refer to it as the mid game.
Some might. Okay, so this telegraphs Explosive Trap. There's no way he'd play Freezing. The only alternative that it possibly could be is Snake Trap, just to bait out a trade.
Yeah.
And he's going to see its Explosive Trap, but I think he won't be too discouraged.
Yeah.
He might play Spectral Knight. He might even play Spectral Knight and hold. He might attack and then play a Naked Spectral Knight, so that way the chances of Unleash the Hounds biting him is a lot lighter.
Yep.
But if he plays Spectral Knight and holds, then Savannah Highmane's much weaker.
Yes. And I mean, Savannah Highmane is sort of the natural progression of things. You know that the Hunter hasn't had too many really impactful plays early on. So you know that his hand is full of more situational drops or later game drops like the Savannah Highmane. So maybe just throwing down the Spectral Knight, passing the turn, and keeping those creatures alive to be able to deal with those drops is could be the best choice. And it always feels terrible just losing 3 creatures like that. Just for nothing, just to preserve 2 extra health on your Spectral Knight, possibly.
Yeah, and Spectral Knight still can't be dealt with Kill Command. He chooses to pop the secret, and unfortunately, he actually might Ancient of Lore here as well. Actually, I didn't think about that, because I forgot about the Innervate draw. And actually, considering he's going to Ancient of Lore, absolutely the right play here to pop the secret then.
Yep.
We should have thought about that a little bit earlier.
Yes,
but as soon as he popped out, I was like, why? Why? It's like, oh, yeah, he has Innervate.
Yeah, he used 1 Innervate last turn as well, so I kept thinking in my brain, oh, that Innervate that he has in his hand doesn't exist. He used that last turn. Not even thinking the possibility that, hey, maybe he drew into his second one.
Exactly, man.
Yeah, So a high main feels pretty natural here, but at the same time, clearing that Ancient of Lore off the board seems pretty enticing as well with the web spinner. Or could even, well, I don't know. There's actually a lot of options. Freezing Trap, putting out a 9 mana Ancient of Lore, but that also could give your opponent that could be used as sort of an emergency heal in the late game. It's an entire turn.
Oh man.
But sometimes that's all a druid needs.
That feels so passive and weak and reactive. You use up a kill command here. Yeah. Max is starting. He wants to control the board before he gets his high main down.
And that's sort of just Max's playstyle in general. You saw how he played his priest, very conservatively, very control heavy, very reactively.
Yep.
And you could see that translate into all the other classes that he plays as well. Even the mage, when he lost super quickly, he didn't really hesitate and just playing it really slow. And even after he saw that first Savage War and got put to 15 health, he immediately just said, you know what, I'm just going to stay calm and just play this water elemental on this empty board. Or, well, empty on his side. And you can really tell Max's playstyle coming out in just every class that he plays.
I think Lothar is really wondering about how to play this turn because he has Force of Nature now, which gets him a lot of damage. Just in pure damage alone, he's got 14 spells-wise. So if he plays Spectral Knight here, which I'm in favor for, he can start piecing together damage. And he can use Force of Nature to bait out a Freezing Trap, which he's almost certainly that this comes out to. You don't want to play Naked Explosive Trap because your opponent could just hero power it down.
Yeah.
The only exception that this might be Snake Trap, but he's about to test for it. And the best part is he was trying to hold on to this Keeper because he knows the inevitable high main might be coming.
Yeah. That's going to be a little bit easier for him to deal with now. And drawn into the Shade, that's not the best. That's probably one of the worst he could have drawn into this time.
You think so?
Well, I guess it puts another token on the board for being able to proc that Savage Aura, but at the same time, it's a little bit slower, and you can tell that Lothar's been trying to play really fast this game, and just by going to face every time, when he could have traded in his minions, not playing around, Unleash the Hounds, it seemed like he was trying to play a little bit faster, but he really wants to get to those Savage Roars quite a bit quicker because...
True. But it's still 2 turns away. He already uses Innervates. I think the next Rammus actually fills out the curve pretty well. The fact is, if he picked up a 2 mana cost minion, it doesn't fit anything, but like he'll be floating a mana. So no matter how he chooses to use this turn, I mean, I'm not even opposed to like using Keeper of the Grove, Silence, and then like Shave Next Rammus, and then just pass.
Okay.
A Force of Nature to pop the Freezing Trap is also viable here if you want to play the defensive game. But it's like we said, I think he wants to get in the damage.
Yeah.
So I think just charging face and making Hunter play control again is like perfectly fine.
Yeah, almost ropes out there, but puts him into perfect.
Oh, he also has another charger. That's funny. I forgot about Freezing Trap putting the Tree Ant back in the hand.
Yeah.
So if he draws Savage Roar, he does have a charger to boost its damage a little bit.
Yep.
That's funny.
And 14 health is sort of that sweet spot. He doesn't have that second Savage Roar in his hand, but again, or the second Force of Nature or Savage Roar in his hand, but that threat, just that threat looming 2 turns from now, is enough to force Max to, like you said, keep playing that control style, keep making sure that he keeps the clear and everything. So, really like this style of play here.
He's got so much damage. He's got 13 damage this turn.
Yeah.
The key is he has to make a balance. He has to keep a beast in his hand so that kill command becomes relevant. He's gonna trade? Oh man.
That's Max.
Exactly what Lothar wants. Oh my goodness.
That is Max in a nutshell right there.
Well, here's also where things become slightly inconvenient, by the way, because there's a Scavenging Hyena, which gets buffed by the kill here. So if you kill off the Savannah High main first, so you're gonna have to actually swipe the
hyena.
The hyena.
Yeah, the hyena came from the web spinner.
Yep. Or you can Wrath and Hero Power and take the damage from, but I think you'd rather not.
Yeah. Because that still would be a lot of damage facing on board as well.
Sure.
Even just a Yeti. 4 damage from a Hunter can be a lot, especially at this stage in the game where you know that they can put out a lot of bursts in any given turn.
Absolutely. But how much is he afraid of combo? I mean, at this point, you can't play around it. So
Yeah,
I
so you
think
just got to go.
Just go.
That's why I think last turn it probably would have been even better to just go. How much damage could he possibly have done that turn? I mean, if he had... Well, double Savage Roar would have killed him, yeah.
Yeah, I think in the back of your mind, you're contemplating about Savage Roar.
Yeah.
The one thing that is worrying in the back of Max's mind, there are no beasts in his hand.
Oh, yeah.
Playing control here feels unnecessary, but I think he's also worrying about other possibilities. Maybe it's not just combo, but what if he just had Druid of the Claw and Savage Roar? How much damage is that? That's
9 damage.
That's 12 damage?
Oh, yeah, with the Keeper still on the board, yeah. Well, that's pretty scary.
That is tense, but even if it's 12 damage, he's alive.
Yeah.
So it's just about wondering about, like, is this killing off this Keeper worth it at all? And I think it's not, unless he just has the pure combo itself, which he already used one piece.
Yep.
Now, you already know he has the Treant, so if he uses the Treant Savage Roar, that's 10 damage.
10 damage.
Nope, 11 because the hero power.
Yeah. And then he would actually have enough mana for like a swipe or something as well in that case.
He'd be 1 short, because it's 3 now.
Oh, yeah.
Which, by the way, he ends up getting the Savage Roar, so...
One more piece, and he's very close to drawing it into lethal here, but at the same time, he's facing a scary board right now.
Yeah, but he can stabilize so easily. He can Wrath, swipe, and he can Wrath for 1, swipe, and play Shade of Naxxramas.
Oh, yeah.
And that's so beautiful for Lothar. And I feel like Max needs a big outer. He's got the runner of Savage Roar back-to-back. Lothar is going to close out this game unless Max can find a way to do something big now. He needs Deathwing off the top or Ragnaros.
Yeah, and those are probably not likely to be seen in this deck. Whoa, Lothar! Could keep him alive. That's going to keep him alive for an extra turn.
That might actually help him a lot.
And that's quite a bit of damage that's going to be facing on the board that Lothar is going to have to deal with, and that's not the easiest creature to be able to deal with. Echoing Ooze, though, is great with those Savage Roars, but again, he wouldn't even need it generally because he's got both of them.
It's fine, though, because this Treant actually does come to value here. Now Lothar can kill off this Lothar, play Ancient of Lore and heal.
Yep.
And then still have a 5/5. It's actually stronger than Shade of Naxxramas.
Yeah.
I think he's also calculating on the off chance he has any kind of killing damage, but he doesn't in this case.
Yeah. I don't think there would be any possible way that he could have killing damage. He's already used one of the kill commands.
Sure.
Yeah, this is the best course of play here.
So, I think he's calculating how much damage does his opponent have. He still has one possibility of kill command.
Yeah.
Say if he rolls Huffer off of Animal Companion. That's 5, 9, plus
16.
5, that's 14, plus hero power, that's 16.
Still wouldn't be able to kill him, and I think that's best case scenario.
Wow, so he armors up instead and attacks. Fearless.
Yeah.
But there's a third card. What if that third card was like Eagle Horn Bow?
Eagle Horn Bow? No, that would be
not enough mana.
Too much mana. Yeah, that'd be 11 mana he would need for that. No, even more. Oh no, that'd be 11 mana.
How often are you going to see a Treant with double Savage Roar that was returned by a Freezing Trap kill off the game? This is actually a little absurd. Max is out of this tournament.
Yeah.
Lothar is going to win.
Not very often, but hey. That's a great use of Force Nature early in the game. There was a lot of plays to be made that turn, but being able to proc that Freezing Trap with that Treant, not only is it a great way to proc the Freezing Trap, but it also sends that back to your hand to give you that little bit of extra oomph that you need for later in the game.
Man, he values his health so much, but it's not going to matter. Lothar drew a lot of the right cards at the right time. Great curve and strong play overall this entire series. He's going to go to the top 4. And now that Max is out, that's yet another player who was in the top 2 previous week who just fell a little bit short of being back for week number 2.
Yeah. Max, though, I mean, he had a great run in the couple weeks that he did play. He still has quite a bit of points from last week when he placed top 2. But Lothar, he played exceptionally well all this series, all 4 games in this series, and really impressed with him. Looking forward to seeing what he's going to bring us for the rest of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. So that wraps up our first series of the day. Again, a big shout out to Lothar for being brave enough to not bring Warlock or Hunter. That's
both these guys, yeah.
Oh,
well, he brought Hunter,
right,
but no Warlock.
No Warlock, which is reasonable considering Soul. Like you just don't understand how much the 1 mana impacts. Right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of times those handlock players on turn 4, they drop the big threats, then
Yep.
they Soulfire to eliminate whatever was challenging them,
Yep.
whether it's like an Azure Drake, or not an Azure Drake, any kind of 4 drop that usually comes out, or even like whatever 3 drop comes out.
Can't do that anymore.
No, you can't do that anymore unless you have the coin, in which case it's it's only 50% of the time.
Yeah.
Zoo, we don't know how much it impacts too, but it does hurt. So I guess now that they're not bringing those classes, they get to be a little bit more creative, and
Yeah.
I like what I'm seeing. I like what I'm seeing.
Yeah.
Hope you guys are enjoying what you're seeing as well. If you want to give a shout out to our sponsors, to newegg.com, do so, because they're the ones making it possible as well. I hope they're enjoying what they're seeing as well. And we're going to get ready for our next series. We'll take a look at the bracket to see where we currently sit in the top 8. We have Xiao GZ versus Brian Kibler coming up on stream. And then the second half of the round of 8, we have D2 versus AP Drop, Silent Storm versus ECOB. That's all going to be happening after a few minutes. Don't go anywhere. More action here at the ESL Hearthstone Legendary Series continues right after this.